President Biden spoke publicly and said that he would defend Taiwan militarily if China invaded Taiwan. China is a communist government that wants to take Taiwan back. You have North Korea, another communist government that wants to take back South Korea. You have Russia, a communist government now invading Crimea and invading Ukraine. Why is that the three superpower nations that are still communist governments now invading and threatening to invade parts of the American allied forces, threatening to invade parts of the continent that they used to control? The communist superpowers are sending a message collectively together to America. When you enter this war, it will be the war to end all wars. President Biden, before you talk about sending troops and putting them on the ground if China invade Taiwan, I say to brothers and sisters in the black community, don't you send your children. If that man try to send your children to put their boots on the ground in a foreign battlefield in Taiwan or China, unless Hunter Biden is right there next to your baby going into battle with him. Ain't nowhere in the hell that these rich white folks at the top should continue sending poor black and brown and white children to go fight wars that rich white people start, but poor children go and fight those wars. I'm sick of that.
Well, we do have a senile, corrupt old man that is running this country into the ground and making us seem weak, right? And I was always ready to criticize Trump, but we've got to stop, and the media has to stop treating Joe Biden with kid gloves. This was clearly a misstep in his just not knowing what he was saying. The articulated policy of the United States is to recognize the one China foreign policy, but we've also agreed in the late 70s that while we wouldn't intervene militarily with our own troops, we would make sure that Taiwan had the weaponry necessary from our war machine to defend themselves. So Biden went against his own policy. His administration is already walking it back. But this is what happens when you have a senile old man who has been lying for the last 40 years in Congress, in the as a member of the Obama administration. He just lies. He lied in law school. He lied the first time he ran for president. He lied as a vice president while his son and his brother were influence peddling. They don't care about America, right? They are just trying to feed at the trough. And now it's got to the point where the Democrats have held him up. They had a lot of much better options, right? I think we can both agree the Democrats had a lot better option than the senile old man, and we will be lucky if we get away from this presidency without World War III. And you can criticize Trump. Charles. People were scared of Donald Trump. I criticized Trump.
Now, we have to be honest. Trump did tell the world, my button is bigger than your button, and he meant it. I understand.
Right.
But at the end of the day, let me tell you the problem with America and these foreign wars. America, you cannot be the police force for the entire world.
Exactly.
You're not who you think you are. You have not won a war in how many years now? You didn't win in Vietnam. You didn't win in Iraq. You did not win in Afghanistan. We look like children running from a battle in Afghanistan and look like we had no strategic plan of action to get in and get out. We look horrible in Iraq when we went there under weapons of mass destruction, and that was a lie, and tens of thousands were killed, including Americans, under the auspices of a lie of weapons of mass destruction by George Bush and his corrupt administration. When are the American people going to be sick and tired of sending your children to play the world's policemen, and poor children are dying, but the rich white folks and rich black folks and the elitists of this nation, they children ain't fighting the wars. It's the poor fighting those wars. So I say to all of us, you start that war, Biden, you make sure you send Kamala's children. You make sure you send your Hunter Biden. Your Hunter likes to get high and do the things he likes to. Go right on over there and fight against them Chinese. Don't you poor brothers and sisters send your children nowhere unless the rich is going right with yours.
I mean, I don't want to see any children die. And you're right about the Republicans. You're right about us entering and then lying. And every one of that stood up and said, hey, there's not weapons. They were shouted down by America, by the media, by this collective desire to push Americans into war because of the profits generated are shared by everyone except working Americans. And it's the working Americans that die. But at some point, we've got to start focusing healthcare in America. It's a crisis. The border is in a crisis. Baby formula, crisis. Supply chain, crisis. And yet we send billions of dollars to the Ukraine. We have sent more money. Well, now hold on. Russia's annual budget for their military is $69 billion. And we send more than that every 2 months to the Ukraine. We need to start worrying about America.
Let me say to the American people, because he ain't listening. Listen, we invaded Iraq and we got $6, $5, and $7 gas prices. We invaded Afghanistan, these oil-rich countries, and yet the gas prices were at an all-time high. We now sending all this money to Ukraine. The grocery shelves are empty. Gas at an all-time high. We ain't got baby formula. We ain't got time to go fight nobody else's war. America is at war with itself, corrupt and mismanagement at the top of this nation's leadership. And we can't do for others what we're failing first to do for ourselves.
So you just said exactly what I said.
I'll say this, until America does what Minister Farrakhan taught, until its leaders begin to look inwardly and admit internal guilt and turn from our wicked ways and lead this nation in a better direction, we will destroy America from within, not an enemy from without.
How about instead, let's set Farrakhan aside and let's talk about just America. Let's set religion aside and say, how do we help Americans, right? How do we demand? And a lot of it is about having honest conversations. The media doesn't have honest conversations. The mainstream media has decided it is on Team Democrat. Obviously, Fox and Fox News, the organization, and other conservative, very overtly conservative, they just support Republicans. So the question is, what do we have to do to start getting back to honest journalism, to having honest criticisms? Because that's the thing. The Biden administration, no one's calling them out as they're driving this bus into a ditch. However, I will disagree that I still think America is the greatest country in the world. We have the greatest people in the world.
We were the greatest country in the world.
When?
Let me tell you when.
Because I've never heard you say that.
Let me tell you when. Let me tell you when.
Okay.
We were the greatest country in the world for many decades, but great don't make us good.
But when?
We were never the goodest country in the world, but we were the greatest country in the world financially and militarily, because great don't make you good.
Then.
There could be a great hurricane, but the hurricane wasn't good.
Why do you
there could be a great earthquake, but the earthquake wasn't good. America has never really been good to all of its citizens, but we have been great but not good. And America has to be both great and good to its own citizens first.
So how do we
try to do it for other folks around the world.
How do we do it? You like to talk about a bunch of stuff, but how do we do it, Quannel?
I'm going to be honest with you, man. I think America, I'm being honest right now. I'm going to hurt a lot of men's feelings. I think it's time that America put more women at the top of the leadership of this nation. I believe America needs strong, dynamic, God-fearing, loving women of this nation to start leading this country. Not women that hates men.
Okay, but what do those women need to do?
Women that love America.
What do whoever? I don't care what color they are, what gender they are,
because
what
the
orientation. I don't care
what the men have done.
But what do they do when they get in power? How do we fix this train?
Well, first of all, the women have never really been in power like that, so give them a chance.
Okay, but what would you have them do?
First of all,
with China, what would you have them do?
Let me tell you something. China ain't going to play with no woman that's in love with America. Baby. Iraq, Iran, and all of those nations like Russia would not play with a woman when you're threatening her children.
They didn't play with Trump.
No, they didn't, because Trump was a damn fool, pardon my French. But he was a wild one. He told the world, my button is bigger than your button. Told North Korea, you little rocket man, I'll blow you off the map. And he wasn't joking. He was dead serious. So, yeah, we need somebody at the top who's just as strong like that when it comes to defending America's interests and defending us against aggressive outward nations that are rogue. But we don't need leaders like Trump who are morally and spiritually bankrupt.
So we don't need leaders like Biden either. The recall of baby formula by regulators led to a closure of a plant that then snowballed into shortages across this country that was largely ignored by the mainstream media for many, many months, as mothers across this country were unable to find first just their brand of formula and then any formula at all. Resellers were going to shelves, buying it all up and exploiting entire communities by upcharging and price gouging, and the media was silent until just recently. Finally, it's getting media attention, and I think the silence and the damage to so many young families, especially young struggling families in America, is downstream from the mainstream media's desire to protect the Biden administration from criticism. But it's gotten so bad, not just with baby formula, but with the economy. We're on the cusp of World War III. but it does seem like we're looking at finally getting some solutions, which involves still sending money overseas, buying formula and having it flown in. We don't have enough solutions for America as we send billions of dollars to Ukraine. Quannel, I got to hear your thoughts.
I believe that we have the solutions to fix the problem. I believe that we have the wrong men and women in leadership at the top that has allowed such a dangerous situation to exist. You have mothers who are driving 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours a day all across different cities and counties searching for baby formula. We're in a nation to where you go in a grocery store, and whoever would have thought 3, 4, 5 years ago we would go into the store and the shelves be so empty. Now you see it's affected not just the price of gas with poor leadership in this nation, it's affected the right for children to have a God-given right to be fed. Now we can send billions, tens of billions to Ukraine for military weapons, but mothers, this administration cannot find enough money to buy milk for you to feed your children. It's because we're in a nation whose priorities are not right. The politicians of America are not leading this nation in the right direction to where our children are starving and nobody could even see this coming. We have to reach out to every nation on earth that we can who has the popular formula that can feed America's children and buy it from them. But don't tell me we can send billions to Ukraine and we can send military jets all across the country. We got the money. Just print some more of what you've been doing and buy the baby formula that these children need. It is a disgrace to see that our nation has fallen to this point. But it's coming and it's going to get worse. The worst is yet to come. You look at the price of food. Look at the price of formula. You have mothers that are paying more in formula in a week than what they're making in some of their jobs because the prices now have been gouged and so high by those exploiting the situation to where some of these mothers can't even afford to go to work or buy baby formula.
You see this as Joe Biden's
It's
fault?
a disgrace. I see it as Congress's fault. Okay. I see it as the Senate's fault. I see it as Biden's administration's fault. But I see it as a leadership problem from the top all the way down.
So do you think that Americans, let's say Americans here in Houston that overwhelmingly supported Joe Biden and the Democrat-controlled Congress and the Democrat-controlled Senate, do you think they should look to the Republicans? Do you think they should look to third parties? Do you think we should start looking to ourselves for solutions and just recognize that neither parties give a damn about us and we've been completely abandoned? Because that's my position. I think America has lost its way. We're like a developing country here. We can't feed our own babies, and it's disgusting.
I believe that we in America must first, the common man and woman, the average man and woman, the working man and woman, the working poor in America must unite, collectively come together beyond racial lines, class lines, etc., and demand that we have better representation at the top coming on down. Congress has failed the American people. Senate has failed the American people.
Both controlled by the Democrats.
Both Democrats and Republicans.
Okay.
The presidents in our country have failed the American people to lead us in a manner that God wants America led. At least the founding fathers, I'll give them credit for this. They tried to write into the very basis of this nation's founding to make sure that we understood that America was blessed by God and should always serve God. We have deviated so far away from what is right, especially politicians. Now, I agree with you, America's beginning to look like a third world country.
So we have the Trump administration, right, where prior to COVID, the economy was booming, okay? We have the Trump administration. We never had any issues with baby formula on the shelves. We have the Trump administration, and we didn't have the cusp of World War III, Taiwan and the Ukraine. I am no fan of Trump. I've never been a fan. In fact, I was vocally against him on the radio for a long time. But what we see is we still see the mainstream media coalescing around Biden, not criticizing Biden. And I'll tell you, who do you think has done a worse job? You think Trump did a worse job or Biden?
Let me say this. Donald Trump was morally bankrupt.
Okay.
Donald Trump was spiritually bankrupt.
But people could feed their kids.
But economically wise, Donald Trump was good for the nation.
Okay.
Military wise, in dealing with America's enemies and letting them know America's not to be played with, Donald Trump was good for the nation. But as an example of what a young man should strive to grow up to be as an American boy looking to the president, he was a very poor example.
Do you think Biden's a better example?
At the end of the day, Joe Biden's biggest problem is this. I don't think psychologically, mentally, and spiritually, he fully comprehends where he is every day of the week. I believe that we have elected a man.
You're giving him a pass.
That we have elected a man that was too old to be president. And when you listen to him and you watch him, you can see that his age is playing a serious role in his inability to properly lead this nation.
Okay, so Joe Biden, for decades, outspoken racist against desegregating schools, busted for cheating in law school. It's a big deal. Your son's in law school. My son's in law school. I'm a lawyer. You cheat in law school, you ain't got no business being a lawyer, let alone a president. First time he runs for president, and I'm in high school, right? He gets busted for plagiarism and has to withdraw. This guy has been a liar and cheater all his life. This laptop comes out, and the media coalesces around him to protect him. His son is on there using drugs, paying prostitutes, telling his former sister-in-law, now his girlfriend, to get an HIV test.
But wait a minute.
He is morally bankrupt.
But wait
the
a minute.
Biden family is morally bankrupt.
Wait a minute. Are you talking about George Bush Jr. and the Bush family or Biden?
Okay, look.
Because everything you just said that Biden did when he was a young man, George Bush Jr. was just as foul and wild when he was a young man also.
George W. Bush
he was just as mentally and psychologically incompetent as Biden was. So don't call out a Democrat and don't call out the Republican.
I call Republicans
them all out.
But Biden's the one running the country into a hole right now, and the media sits silent. And they sat silent while mothers were starving. And it's time for the media to stop playing favorites. I throw darts each way on the radio, and I get all kind of hate to it. Our media needs to hold Democrats to account.
I'm going to tell you what I think America needs. I think America needs a very strong woman to be president.
Okay.
I think it's time that America get a very strong woman, highly intelligent, without fear, to fight and lead this nation. Because I believe that if that kind of woman was leading this nation, we wouldn't have a baby formula problem. We wouldn't have a grocery problem, the grocery store food being on the shelves, and mothers know better than anybody the price of gas to drive around this country to go to work and take children to school and pick them back up. So I think it's time that America get a strong woman and let her be president.
And I think it's time that America gets the most honest, best person. I don't care what gender, I don't care what race. I think we need the best person that actually cares about this country instead of caring for themselves.
Sounds like a woman to me. Nick Saban, the coach of Alabama, is angry with Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M. He's angry with even Deion Sanders and Jackson State. He called out both coaches in both universities for quote-unquote buying football players. Jimbo Fisher, for the first time in his coaching career and A&M's coaching tenure, they have the #1 recruiting class in the nation for 2022. And Jimbo Fisher said A&M bought all of its players. Then Jimbo fired back at A&M using language that if the players were using that same language, they would be punished. If the players were saying things that Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban said about each other, the players would be punished. I would encourage both coaches have the same behavior publicly that you teach your players to have publicly. And also, I would say to Saban, don't be angry now that the playing field has been leveled, that many of these brothers are not just running and jumping for you all for free. Now these brothers can get paid, and you're angry because now they're doing what you don't want them to do with economic freedom.
I would say that Nick Saban looked in the mirror and saw that he failed and needed somebody to blame. I think what he said about Jimbo Fisher was a lie. And I think that's what Benedict Saban does. I say that as an LSU man and not a fan of that cowardly coach. But I will tell you what he said about Deion. You know, Neon Deion, people want to play for him because he's a charismatic superstar that's been inspiring victory his entire life. People want to play for Jimbo Fisher because they got a great program over there. And Nick Saban's used to winning easy, and he ain't winning this year. So he didn't just say something. He defamed both men, and he should be held to account. He should be fined. I think America's tired of Nick Saban, and I think he was probably talking about himself. I think he's probably talking about what he does to get the best players.
Nick Saban is the greatest college football coach to ever coach the game, period. He's the GOAT. We know that.
Absolutely
But they're not playing for Deion Sanders just because he has a personality that they're attracted to.
Deion Sanders,
they're playing for Deion because Deion is a great football coach. Okay. They're playing for Deion, like Deion said, we don't have to pay our people to play for our people because Deion understands the mindset, the cultural sensitivities, the cultural realities.
We agree.
And as a black man, he understands black football players. So Nick Saban, if you want to keep getting black football players, you might want to get more black assistant coaches to help you do that. Same thing for those going
you don't
forward.
Think white male
you better
coaches
have
can
more black
understand
assistant
black
coaches.
football players? You
Sir?
don't think white male coaches can understand black football players?
I say that white male coaches are all in the Kool-Aid and don't know the flavor. They try to be black, act black, but they ain't black.
So how is Nick Saban the best as a white man?
Because Nick Saban had all of the tools and the carrots under the table to give to those black football players. The same thing
I
that
love
Jimbo
how
and
you
them doing
turn
right
everything
now.
to race, man. We just can't
Of
have a
course
talk about
not.
what a scumbag Nick
No,
Saban is.
Let me say this. Could you imagine if all black football players, the best in the nation, all went to a black university? Woo, could you picture that?
Hey,